Well, hello there. Good to talk to you again. And we're getting ever closer to the Leitrim GAA Supporting Others Initiative. Well, if you were tuned our way yesterday evening, you'd have heard all about this particular event that's taking place on Saturday. That is going to be a virtual run or cycle where the Leitrim GAA players, past and present, indeed, are very much involved. The current team very much behind this particular initiative, and indeed two charities that are going to benefit from it in Pieta House and indeed the Slainte 2020 as well. Well, to find out a little bit more about Slainte 2020 and indeed the effects of COVID-19 in New York and the effect that it has on the huge Irish community there, I'm delighted to welcome the incoming president of the GAA, Larry McCarthy, to our broadcast this evening. Larry, great to catch up with you again. And maybe just to start off, give us an indication or maybe an account in your own words of what the situation with COVID-19 is like in New York at present.
Well, John, unfortunately, this region has become the global epicenter of this awful pandemic. You can see the numbers in terms of deaths and hospitalizations and things like that. Now, having said that, they are beginning to control it a little bit. But when you think about it in the context of the economic capital of the so-called most developed nation in the world, that there were mass burying people here in paupers' graves a number of weeks ago. It's absolutely harrowing. You know, when you see field hospitals going into Central Park, it's sobering. But my Lord, when you see people being mass buried in paupers' graves in 2020, it's absolutely shocking. And that's, you know, that's the environment we are in at the moment. Now, having said that, government is doing a very good job in terms of controlling it, and Governor Cuomo in particular seems to have got a grasp on it. The lack of leadership at the federal level is unsurprising, shall we say. But Governor Murphy and Governor Cuomo are doing a very, very good job in trying to bring this thing under control. And bit by bit, they're beginning to open up the state of New York. There was 2 regions opened up this week. There's a certain number of criteria that they have to meet, and they're beginning to open. So there is some light at the end of the tunnel. But in the city, we're not there yet or anywhere close to that. And obviously that's where the vast majority of the Irish people are. Hence the need for the Slainte fund, you know.
The pressure that must be on the medical personnel over there, Larry, and indeed the struggle even to obtain PPE equipment for them to fight this particular virus, is something that's been covered over here quite extensively in the media. Has that situation even improved?
It has. That has improved significantly. They have been able to gather their PPE equipment, but I mean, still the numbers going into the hospitals have been reduced. So at some level, the stress on the medical profession has been reduced. But the initial stress through the month of March was incredible. Now, in fairness to a lot of nurses and a lot of medical people from the west coast of the US, they were volunteering and actually coming into New York as part of sort of their whole attitude to this. That, you know, we have the qualifications here, we're going to go and help. And there was quite a lot of people came into hospitals in New York, particularly when they saw their other nurses and doctors getting ill and they were replaced. But I mean, it's you know, it's such a hard thing to get your head around in terms of the numbers and the overwhelming numbers, particularly in the hospital situation, that it's difficult to comprehend, John. But having said that, there is light at the end of the tunnel.
We gave a kind of a background to Slainte 2020 in last night's podcast, but if it can just maybe initially touch on the plight that many Irish people find themselves in New York at the moment. Those who are working legally obviously might be able to get their hands on the Irish equivalent of the COVID payment. But as we all know, there's a lot of undocumented Irish over there. And at this particular moment in time, they find themselves in a very, very serious predicament.
Yeah. They do. They find themselves in a very, very precarious situation altogether. For various reasons, some of them would not have access to the government payments or the institutional payments that are available. And our data suggests that, for instance, about 60% of the people who've come to Slainte are in the hospitality business. And there's about 40% of them in the construction business. Now, there's some light at the end of the tunnel in terms of construction. There is no light at the end of the tunnel in terms of the hospitality business. But what you're talking about here is security of food and security of accommodation. in terms of helping these people out, because, you know, if you're in the hospitality business, you were depending on tips to a great extent. And if that's gone and you don't have any access now to any other payments, you're looking at a very, very precarious situation for yourself, perhaps, and maybe even for your family, you know. And so that was the initiative. And the initiative came from Seamus Clark, whom you all know, in terms of being a sponsor of the Leitrim GAA. He gathered a bunch of us on the day after the bars and restaurants were closed in New York, and we had a meeting in the car park of another tavern on McLean Avenue called Rory Dolan's. And he said, look, this is an idea I have. We're going to put this into place. Let's see how it works out. And all kudos to himself and to his wife, Catherine, for doing that, and then all the other organizations joined in. But it is to give, you know, security of food and security of accommodation to people who don't have access to government payments.
And from having indeed communicated with your good self many years ago and setting up radio broadcasts for championship games in New York, and having been there on a couple of occasions for Leitrim matches as well, there's a great, I suppose, connection between the Irish and the GAA in New York in particular. And each and every year when the team from Connacht travels over there, which has been the case since 2002, there's always a fantastic atmosphere at Gaelic Park. And I suppose those connections are well and truly cemented by now.
Oh, they are. They're well and truly cemented by now. But I mean, yeah, I mean, we've, as you well know, as both of you well know, hope springs eternal in terms of our you know, attempts to win a match in the Connacht Championship. But I mean, you know, it's the event in and of itself that is probably more important. And I go back all the time, well, for the last 3 years at least, to when Sligo were out here the last time. There was a photograph taken underneath the scoreboard in Gaelic Park, and there was 92 people from the village of Curry in the photograph. Now, that would not have happened without the GAA. And okay, we lost the game and stuff like that. But I mean, think of that in terms of the sort of the community of Curry and the reason for traveling. And there are a lot of Curry people here. But I mean, I can't say the game is unimportant or the winning of the game is unimportant, but it's the event in and of itself is as important as the game, shall we say. And so there should be absolutely no threat to that in the context of you know, COVID or anything like that, because it's such a huge community affair. And there's very, very strong connections, obviously, between ourselves and all of the Connacht counties. And the very fact that Leitrim are rowing in behind this event on Saturday is absolutely fabulous.
The GAA, like many other sporting organisations at the moment, it's a matter of having a watch and brief and seeing maybe if a vaccine can be found, seeing maybe if the pandemic can in some ways burn itself out over a period of time. Inevitably, questions will be asked about whether or not we're going to have, you know, future games in New York. You very much would hope that it continues there.
Oh yeah, hey, hold on, no, John. You're beginning to sound like Trump here, and you hope that it'll burn itself out. You know? Yes, the games. There's absolutely no reason why the game should be stopped because of COVID, right? As an entity. Now, having said that, next year, if we're still the global epicenter of this awful pandemic, well, there's a very good reason why people wouldn't travel, and we would totally accept that, right? But I mean, we want to see the games continue. They're part and parcel of who we are. We've established a very strong connection with Connacht, and we would like to see that going on. And we want to participate in Tier 2, you know, if we get the opportunity.
Talk to me about 2020, and we all watched John Horan, who's the current president of the GAA, on the Sunday game last weekend. It really is, I suppose, a matter of watching, see how all develops, and keeping in mind the safety of the players and all the members of the association. That has to be very much of the most paramount importance in all of this.
Absolutely it has, and John elucidated it very, very well last Sunday on the Sunday game. We'll stick rigidly, I would suspect, to the public health recommendations, and when we're allowed to play, we'll come back to play, acknowledging that our players and our communities are the health of our players and our communities are the most important thing.
Terry, if I can just bring you in here for a moment as well, and I know we talked yesterday evening about this whole initiative. The Leitrim players have bought into this in such a big way. €5,000 was the magic sum that was raised yesterday evening. The target was 10,000. The Leitrim support are fantastic. They're going to very much get behind this, I know, over the next couple of days. So again, it's a great initiative, I suppose, for bringing everybody together in a time where we have to keep our distance.
Well, that's true. And to be fair, I know you're talking figures, you're talking about 5,000 and 10,000, but I think the most important thing to come out this week is the awareness that it will create around Ireland for the plight of their own abroad and how they need to be looked after. And okay, we you know, Pieta has done fundraising in the last week and has done very, very well, and they did offer great and wonderful services. Unfortunately, downturns in economics creates upturns for people like Piet or associations like them where they have to come into play, because when people get in trouble, you know, financially and that, the mind starts to play at them and they get in, you know, they need counselling and they need whatever it is. So they need to be brought back from the brink. And to be fair, Slainte is probably the first wall in that, because it stops people from getting that far. It helps them out. And, you know, if you're physically nourished and then you're mentally nourished, once you're looked after and your worries are not as bad as they seem to be, and there is somebody out there to help you. And that is the great thing about the initiative this week, I would see from it. Now, to be fair, as you said again about the Leitrim guys and the Leitrim players and all like that, we would have had that connection with Seamus. And, you know, I've been in New York in a number of guys in the last couple of years, namely probably fundraising for Cavan, and I've been over there and I met Seamus, I met everybody over there. And the one thing you find about people in America, whether it's Boston, New York, whatever city you want to go with the right people, they're very, very welcoming. And that probably stored a little thing with the players as well from the last time I was out there. Now, I wasn't involved with them, and I know it doesn't come around for Leitrim again for a number of years. And whether I'm involved with them the next time or not, and please God, we'll see how that goes. I do intend to be there if all goes well, because of the nature of the people in New York and how welcome they are. And I just feel that it's, you know, we have been taking of all those people for years. I think now it's time for us to give back a little.
Larry, if we can just go to you finally on one last point. When you see the way the GAA as an organisation has responded to the challenge of COVID-19, so many members of the association are on the front line as doctors and nurses and providing other essential services. But the work that the GAA is doing in communities, not alone here at home, but overseas as well, they're making sure they're staying in contact with people that have to cocoon. They're doing deliveries of groceries. There are so many ways here that the Gaelic Athletic Association has very much stepped up to the plate. And what the Leitrim senior football team are doing here in conjunction with yourselves is another prime example, and it epitomises that spirit of goodwill that's in the GAA.
Oh, it absolutely does, John. I mean, I was thinking the other day, I wonder, could you get your head around how much money has been raised by the GAA for all the various charities around the world in the last couple of weeks? I mean, it's got to be an incredible amount of money given to everybody. I mean, I know, for instance, Rathode did Rathode did a run last Sunday week where they raised money for the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre and for cystic fibrosis. Bishopstown are doing a run this weekend, I think, from Malin to Mizzen to Malin sort of stuff. I mean, the amount of money, and aside from the sort of input into the communities, just the sheer amount of money that's been raised has been phenomenal, I would suspect. But your point is very well made. The GAA has really stepped up to the front in terms of supporting communities, all sorts of ways and little ways, and the vast majority of it unknown to us. You know, the discreet sort of phone call here and the dropping of the groceries there, you know, nothing publicized, but just done. But I mean, that goes to the notion that we're a community organization and we're very much part and parcel of the community. And we will continue to be, you know, no matter what happens. You know, whenever we get back to games, we'll get back to games. But I mean, that sort of coming together has been, and we've seen it everywhere across the globe where the GAA is, has been phenomenal, you know, absolutely phenomenal. Let me go back to one other thing.
Yes.
Maybe Terry might jump on this. It hasn't gotten any bite here. We ran, when I say we ran, the New York team ran 1,000 kilometers instead of playing Galway in Gaelic Park. So by that definition, we won the first round of the Connacht Championship. Right? We're due to play Sligo in the second round. And I suggested to Johnny Glynn and to Jerry Fox, Jerry is our manager and Johnny is involved with the team, is there any way that we could now compete against Sligo? Because we're due to play Sligo. Oops, my phone is going off. Is there any way we could play Sligo next weekend, for instance, in some sort of a way like that, just to sort of give it a little bit of a buzz or interest, and obviously raise funds as well. So we might have to challenge Leitrim maybe to a 1,000 kilometer run.
Well, it's virtually, you can do it virtually. Everything can be done virtually now, like us speaking here. So, you know, it's not impossible, but we probably have to give them a little rest after next weekend and then maybe go the weekend after that.
Are you telling me Leitrim are afraid of New York, Mr. Manager?
Well, afraid is probably putting a little bit too far, but everybody is always afraid going to New York because they don't want to be the first to get caught.
There's been one or two scares over there, all right, Terry. And I thought for a moment, Larry, maybe it was Paul Taylor that was ringing you there to try and maybe not go ahead with this challenge. Well, look at gentlemen, the very best of luck over the weekend. Terry, just to give you a final word on this, I know the Leitrim players, they've all bought into it. And I suppose over the next 24 hours now, it's just a matter of finishing off your preparations for this. Then everybody gets out on Saturday. The photographs come in from where the walks, the cycles are taking place, and everybody will be able to keep track of that on the Leitrim GAA website.
Yeah, well, I think the most important part about it is, and we have to congratulate the 94 lads we get involved in this, to be fair as well, but it's actually not about it whether you walk or run or jog or cycle. It's how you can get people to put their hands in their pockets. And at the end of the day, this is what is going to show how the initiative went. And, you know, that's what I would encourage people, and that's the message I want to send. It is, at the end of the day, lads, you don't have to participate with the Leitrim guys. You just have to support them, and the best way to support them is putting a donation into the funds.
It's a fantastic initiative, Terry. Thank you so much. Larry, can we wish you the very best of luck?
Thanks, John.
In the weeks, months, years ahead in your term as president of the GAA. Hopefully all this will pass and we can look forward maybe to those trips coming back to New York before too long as well.
All right.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
Yes,
John.
thank you very much. Terry, thanks.